For the I was working for the Air Force for over 25 years, and I worked with sexual assault survivors. So I did sexual assault prevention response. And I'm a social worker, so I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing anymore. It's like something ended, like the energy just died kind of vibe. And I was in the kitchen in February of 2025, and I just felt this voice inside, like my said, "You're done. You're done." And I knew I was so burned out and so depleted, and I needed to heal. The job was constant crisis, constant stress, and it was affecting my health. It really was. And so I decided to resign after 25 years, and I left, and the past few months I've just been healing, trying to get myself back. And I tell you, I'd say the past 3 weeks I'm finally feeling like Carmen again. And so I'm feeling a lot better. I'm doing what I love to do, which is write and teach and talk about astrology and do astrology. So I'm doing this full time. I've always done it part time, but it never felt right to do it full time my whole life. It was more of a hobby, more of, what I love to do. And everyone's like, "You're so passionate about this. You should do it full time." And I'm thinking, because I'm so practical, I'm a Virgo. It was hard for me to give up a normal, secure job. As an earth sign, we like security. And
Mhm.
and so I like knowing I got a paycheck coming every 2 weeks, and I can use that to do my fun stuff, right? And my
Mhm.
classes and whatever I want to do. But no, it's weird because I'm grieving. It's like the grieving process, really. Because when I first, just announced I was resigning, people cried. I mean, I wasn't even emotional at the time because I had cried for 4 days before I went in to tell them, because I knew it was over. And there was no change in my mind. I mean, several friends at work, that knew I was going to leave, they tried to change my mind, and they're still calling me now. "You're going to have to come back. They're going to ask you to come back." I'm like, I said, "I'm not coming back. It's over. It's done. It's like I did my time, and the universe wanted me on a new path. I just knew I had to let it go." And
Wow.
it was hard though, because it was fear. The fear of the unknown and the fear of taking a risk is what kept me in the job for the past 2 years, because I should have really left 2 years ago. But it was, we get stuck in this feeling that we have to do something, and and I don't even know how I made it as long as I did in that job, honestly. And people are still saying, "Oh, you got to come back." I'm like, I don't want to. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, I feel like I want to have autonomy and freedom and flexibility to make my own schedule. I want to work for myself. I want to be my own boss. I want to do what I want to do. And I don't want to have to be back in that. I mean, I did it my whole life, but it's like I can't do anymore.
Right.
So it really has been hard. It's been like a loss, I went through the stages of grief, when they had my going away, everybody was in tears on there, and I didn't feel emotional. It kind of hit me when I finally was gone, the denial, and then the little bit of anger. You go through these different stages of reminiscing, and because it's all I knew my whole life
Mhm.
was the Air Force and that job. So I was a military spouse, so I followed my husband around for 20 years. So I always had to get jobs when I could get a job on base or contractor. I did a lot of that, um, but I finally got in the GS system, which took me a long time to do because it was so hard for a military spouse to get a job, even with a license in social work. I just couldn't get a job, and we lived in Germany twice, and it was just unique. And I finally got my career, and I moved up, and I was pretty as high as I could go as a social worker, and I walked away from it all. I gave it
Mhm.
all up in March 2025, just a couple months ago. So I'm
What
now like,
yeah.
whoa, I did
Mm.
this. This is crazy.
What gave you that, like, confidence to finally make that decision and to leave?
I'll be honest, I think it was an age thing, because I'm going to be 50. And so I was sitting here, and I just kept thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to be 50." Like, I don't feel 50, you know?
Mhm.
Like, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm still in my 30s, and I'm thinking I'm going to be young and energetic forever and be able to have all the time in the world to do all the things I actually love to do. And it hit me. Life is short. And I was sitting there, and I'm like, I could die tomorrow. And I
Mhm.
didn't do what I know in my soul gave me passion. and that's astrology and counseling people and writing books and healing and all these things. So I decided I'm just going to do it. And I told my husband, and he supported it. And I said, give me a year, at least a year or two to see how I can, provide and make some money. It's not about the money to me though, it's about the fulfillment. I realized I had an affirmation hanging on my um desk, and this hat, I had that there before the change hit me. So I was, not, I wasn't feeling good. I was just physically, mentally, emotionally, my health, I was having health issues, things like that. And I'm like, I'm going to start trying to manifest because I know it works. And I was thinking positive thoughts and trying to, get out of the old energy. And I put a little affirmation that said, I am thankful for creative, abundant, fulfilling full-time work as an entrepreneur. So that
Mhm.
was my thing. And here I'm working in a normal job in the government, where, you don't usually just quit a job like that. But I had that up there, not really thinking of the consequences of if it happened, right? Like, because when the universe started changing, started bringing me what I asked for, I was like, oh, wait. Oh, I don't know about this. I was afraid. I was afraid.
What did you notice? Like, what were the things that the universe was initially bringing in your way?
So I literally was reading it every day, and within a week or two, the energy shifted. And I literally woke up out of bed one day and I had an email from one of my publicists from the UK where I write books for them. And he pretty much asked me, we want you to write another book. And we want to, make you one of our big authors. We're going to publicize you. Will you write more books for us? I'm like, yeah. So, there that happened. Then people were asking me to do classes, and we teach, do this, and it was all astrology stuff. I'm like, yeah. And then my other publisher, they pop around and ask me to write this other book and this calendar thing. And I'm like, I just can't make it up. All these things were coming my way of the things that bring me fulfillment.
Mm,
But I was afraid because of the security issue of the money, you know,
mm,
because when you're doing your own business, it's fluctuate. You don't know you're going to make money, what you're going to make each month. And you might, with charts, with readings and consults, I may get 2 to 5 a month. I'm not getting 5 a week,
mhm,
and to make up for my income I was going to give up.
mm.
But it wasn't about that, because I'll be honest, if I didn't have my husband support, I mean, if it was just me, I don't know if I would have been able to actually do this,
It's so hard.
financially. I
Oh
mean,
no, it's so stressful.
I think, and so I'm blessed. I'm so grateful that I've been married 26 years,
I think
and
each household can only have one entrepreneur.
I know, I was
And
like,
then a balance of a regular job person.
it's too hard for both people to work. I mean, I remember when I got this job, I knew it was going to be hard because there's a lot of travel. This is before COVID.
Mm,
I was gone 2 to 3 weeks a month, and my daughter was still in high school, and I had my puppy who I'm very close to. I hate leaving my baby, wrote my little mini golden doodle, and I would, have to find dog walker. What am I going to do? Because he worked and he was coming home late, and I was worried about my dog. And I did it though. It was constant stress and go, 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 high tempo job, high stress, on the phone all day, all night, getting calls after hours. I mean, it was 24/7,
oh,
it's
wow.
response, it's crisis intervention. And I was just living in this high crisis mode. I really was living in the flight or fight mode. I know I was. And so my dog's over here. So I know I was living in that. But I didn't know it till I quit, because I was so used to that energy, which I realized was unhealthy.
Mhm,
Because I was getting stomach issues, I was getting, all these, weird things, headaches, migraines, just it was all the body keeps score. I was dealing with trauma all the time, people's
mhm,
trauma. Then,
mhm.
then we have our own trauma, from my own life and family and past, but it was the constant hearing negative things, and help having to give advice to people in the field on how to help victims, policy advice, all these things. So I couldn't escape it. And I was just so busy all the time. I was too tired on the weekend because I had to recover from the work week. I didn't even want to do charts anymore. And I'm like, this sucks because that's what I like doing. It's
Mhm.
astrology and writing. I couldn't even write. And so on top of this, when what happened was I got offered my first real book deal to write a book. And I had tried before years ago, and it's hard to get into publishing. And I thought I'll just self-publish, right? Well, I had an idea for a book called Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing. And I thought, wow, each sign heals in a certain way. They have their strengths, their healing abilities, how they self-care. I had this idea, and I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Examples of those, of sun signs and how they heal different ways? So for people listening who are like, "I'm a Leo, maybe I should try
Yeah,
this."
yeah, we could talk about, yeah, I can go through each sign. You want me to?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
this is for your sun sign and for people who are just like, "I have no idea what that is."
let me get, yes. So we got how it works is your sun sign is the month and date of your birth and year. So everyone knows if you're August 26, you're a Virgo. So everyone born on that day is a Virgo. So if we're just looking at the sun, there's so much more about your personality than that. You have a moon sign, a rising sign, you have all these other placements, but just looking at the sun alone, that's your main identity, the sun. And when you read a horoscope or you look in the paper, that is the energy that you're going to resonate most with because that's where you shine, where your main personality. So the zodiac has 12 signs, and the first sign is Aries. Aries starts the spring, okay? And so it's March, April, okay? Everyone kind of knows their main birth date sign, I think. But Aries is the leader, okay? They're the warrior of the zodiac. They are the fearless one. They're courageous, they're impulsive, they're impatient, they're passionate. They're go-getters, they're motivated, they focus on the future, they get things done, okay? They're high energy people, they're fire sign. Okay, fire is passion, right? Romantic, but they have a hard time sitting still and committing because they love their freedom and independence. So Aries, the way they heal is by learning to slow down and take time to heal, because they don't, if something bad happens, they just move on. They cut it off and they're like, I got to survive. I don't have time to deal with this. Like
They have
that,
like an avoidance tendency,
yeah, yeah,
like, "Hurry up and get past this." And
yeah.
what I'm hearing is that their remedy is to sit back and slow down and be in it.
And feel it. Yeah, let themselves feel because they don't take the time to process what is happening to them. They like to keep busy and work, 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 hobby, hobby, hobbies, keep on the go and sitting. And when you stop and have to not be doing something is when you start thinking about things. So that's kind of their avoidance thing.
Mhm.
To keep busy, and they're prone to headaches. Okay, Aries rules the head, face, brain, so a lot of them get migraines. They
Mm.
get migraines, they get um, jaw issues, they get eyes, their eyes, but a lot of them, they're prone to head injuries too. Like they may hit their head, get a concussion, play because they play sports. A lot of them are athletic, not all of them, but some of them like to play sports because they love competition. They
Mhm.
love to win, okay? And they're very passionate. And Aries are also known to have a little bit of a temper. So it's this temper that comes out. The thing, and it shocks people because they're very much about what about me? Like, how does this affect me? Like, some people think they're selfish, but it's not that. It's just that they have this strong sense of self-reliance because they don't want to depend on anyone else to take care of them. Like,
Mm.
they're like, I got to do it on my own because
Yeah,
they're
they
not
like
so
it their way.
their way. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the reason is their polar opposite sign is Libra. So I'll do the pairs. That's easy to. So
Okay.
Libra, every sign has a polar opposite, which when you think polar opposite, you think it means they don't get along, but they do. It means that you're actually very compatible with the opposite sign that's in the sky when you're born, because there's always in the sky the opposite constellation. So Libra rules relationships and compromise and people pleasing, peace, harmony, justice, fairness. So they're all about how can I help others and what do others need? Where Aries is all about what do I need? So you
Mm.
can see the polarity.
I
But then,
see a codependent relationship.
yes, Libras are very codependent, and Libras typically attract Aries, and Aries attract Libra because they're
Mm,
compatible elements. Because Aries is fire, Libra's air. So fire and air signs are always opposite in the sky. This is one cool thing to remember about astrology. And they're always a compatible element. And we have something in astrology called modalities. All that means is think of it as energy. Astrology is energy. That's how I explain it. And so, cardinal energy likes to get things started. They're the idea people. They like to say, hey, let's do this. What about this? And then let other people take it and run with it and plan it and initiate it. They just like to have the ideas and creativity. Hey, let's get things started. The cardinal signs start the seasons. This is why tropical astrology has lasted since the beginning of time, ancient times, because it's based on the sun going through the ecliptic circle. So it's really even in the Bible, because it doesn't change, and that's because it has to do with the seasons. So Aries, it starts the spring. Libra starts the fall.
mhm,
So Libra, September, October. So that's how you know they're cardinal signs, the matches, because they're always going to be the same modality too. And
mm,
so cardinal signs are idea people. So Aries and Libra, they're similar but different. Okay, but they both are learning a different thing. Libra's learning to partner and to commit and have relationships. They rule the house of marriage in the birth chart. And then Aries is the house of self, freedom, independence, self-reliance, the body, the physical body, and being an advocate. Aries speak their mind, speak the truth. Libras don't do that. They don't want to hurt people's feelings. So they can be like pleasing people, agreeable. They don't really show up. You don't really know what they're thinking because they kind of go along with everyone because they want to, adapt and take care of others, right? And then we have Taurus, which
So
is
what is, pardon, what is a Libra's like healing path? What might they
okay.
lead to that would be their
So
challenge?
they heal by learning to say no and
Mm,
learning to speak up for themselves
mm,
because they don't. So they need to learn that they don't have to please their partner and do everything for someone else. They also need to take care of themselves, and their needs matter. Because
yeah.
Libras, they don't always focus on their own needs because
Mm,
they really want to be in love. They like to be in love and they like to have relationships. So there's someone that wants to be in a relationship. They're ruled by the planet of love, Venus. So they love beauty, art, creativity. So they love to learn. They are an air sign though, so they're very smart and intellectual too, in a way, and they're very factual. A lot of Libras go into law and criminal justice, things like that, right? Lawyers, because they want fairness and justice, but they're learning to balance life,
mm,
balance their thoughts, balance their emotions. They're the scales, a balance is their symbol. And so they're learning that. And their vulnerable area is their back and I believe the kidneys. So it's important for them, to watch, their back and things like that, especially like I think it's the lower back. So every sign has like a vulnerable body area, and that tends to be where stress manifests itself. Aries gets headaches, Libra gets back pain,
mm, mm,
maybe UTIs, because of the kidneys, things like that. They need to drink enough water, make sure their system's flushing out and all that. And then Taurus is the bull. Taurus is earth. Taurus is very stubborn, strong-willed. They're the patient sign. They're very grounded, very calming, but they're also very, um, when they make their mind up, nobody's going to change it. They're strong-willed, and people they'll ask for advice, but they don't really take it or listen. And and I know them. I mean, you can feel Taurus is like, whoo. When you walk in the room, they make you feel safe and grounded because they have such a earth energy, and
mm,
they like to make money. They like to work hard. They like food. They like drink. They love nice things. They're hard workers. All the earth signs are focused on work and achievement. They like to plan and they take baby steps because they don't like change.
mm,
Tauruses can get stagnant because they live in the past. They're very nostalgic. So they're
Mm.
always connected to memories, people they used to grow up with, their hometown, who they love.
Reminiscences from their teenage years.
Yeah, yeah, that's Taurus. Like they'll remember things and oh yeah, I went on a date and they'll have their pack rats. Some of them will like have scrapbooks of all their first love with their little movie ticket stubs and
They're
their
archivists, or
yeah,
like the Tauruses I know are really good archivists and documentarians.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's something so beautiful about that.
I know, isn't it? And it's cool. And I like Tauruses. I have a lot of them in my life. But Taurus needs to be out in nature. They need to ground to the earth. They need to connect. That's how they get their energy is like being out with flowers, gardening, getting their hands in the dirt. No, Taurus rules the senses. Sight, smell, taste, touch, and they rule and their area, their vulnerable area is the throat and the thyroid.
Mm.
And a lot of Tauruses can sing. Okay.
You are describing my mom to a T.
Yeah, they can sing. They're artistic and creative. Yeah. Yeah. It fits. See, it's because it's
Yeah.
energy. It's energy. It doesn't, it's always, it resonates with people. That's why they want to learn about it because and the reason I say it's so accurate and it validates what you already know about yourself and it validates what you know about your family and friends. You're like, oh my God, that's so my friend or that's so my mom, right?
And doesn't it feel so good to like have these kind of universal laws or like patterns that we can be like, oh, I feel this. Like it makes me feel like I belong to this greater schema of organization and design in the universe. Like to me,
Yeah.
that's why I love astrology, even though I'm not an expert clearly as you are, but like I feel it, when um so listeners, Carmen does readings and I received one and it was like very insightful. And it didn't feel like it could have just been written for anybody because it was not just my sun sign. It included other details and nuances of the houses. And it was so fun to read and it was like helpful because it helped me see the things about myself that I'm like, yeah, I'm just that way. But like those are the things that I need to work on. It should
Sure.
be where I can work more deeply to create more harmony in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the chart is the map of the soul. And so when you
Mhm.
know the basic chart, you'll know you can know your strengths. So, you know, like Taurus, their strength is patience. You know,
Mm.
Aries' strength is resilience. They don't give up. Libra's strength is they're peaceful and they're very understanding and they're fair. They're very fair about things. They want to make sure everyone's treated right.
Mm.
Everyone has their strengths. And then the opposite of Taurus is Scorpio, which is water. So fire and air signs always oppose each other, and earth and water signs always oppose each other. So compatible elements, earth and water, compatible in nature, fire and air, compatible in nature. So Taurus is earth, Scorpio is water. Scorpio is one of the signs. Taurus and Scorpio are the money signs. So they rule financial things. Taurus is more about making your own money, what you find what is valuable. Self-worth is also a Taurus thing, not just financial, but they like material things because it brings security and safety. Tauruses do. But it's not that they're just, money hungry or something like that. But some of them, they work hard to make money because they like nice things. They want to buy everything they like. They want to have the money to do it. So Scorpio's a little bit the same, but Scorpio's more secretive about it. Scorpio is more strategic and plans. They're the business-minded person. Taurus is more of a worker. Scorpio's more of a businesswoman, a businessman. They plan, they strategize, they want to make good money. They also are very powerful. They have a very powerful energy. Scorpio's ruled by Pluto, so they're the sign of death and rebirth. They're the sign of sexuality. They're the sign of healing. So anything deep and dark and taboo, Scorpios are interested in it.
Mhm.
And Scorpios are drawn to healing fields. Okay. A lot of them get into astrology, Reiki, all these different things, counseling, psychology. Then some of them go into being, detectives,
Mm.
CIA agents, solving murders and crimes and bad guys, right? They're drawn to that. Some of them go into business and finance, sales. Some of them want to own their own business and they're really good at it. And so, but Scorpios, um, they like to be, they don't want anyone to really know they're vulnerable. So they don't trust people easily. So Scorpios, one of their greatest challenges is learning to trust others. And they're very loyal once they trust you, but they also feel like they know that people could hurt them and betray them. So they're very and they can have rocky relationships and they can have intense things happen in their life, like they could lose a loved one at a young age. A lot of them do, like a parent or a sibling or a child. They can have trauma and very unique situations that affect them from a young age that really make them a Scorpio because they're a little bit protected and guarded. And
Mhm.
you'll know because, but everyone wants to tell Scorpio their secrets because their energy is so powerful. It's like their energy is this high vibe, is the way I explain it. So people with problems will walk up to them and start telling them, my dad died or this happened. And they're like, why are people telling me this? Everyone wants to tell them their secrets, but see, they don't want to tell you their secrets. So
Mm,
you may feel like you share all this stuff with them, but you don't really know a lot about them because
mm,
they're private. They're very private. And they're not the type to just talk, talk, talk and tell you stuff. No. And they don't like people that share gossip and stuff like that. They don't like fakeness. They're kind of matter of fact, can be a little harsh, and they want things black and white and they'll tell you what they think. You know what I mean?
mm, mhm.
It
I
can
have these friends.
it can come off as a little cutting. It's
Yes,
sometimes
sometimes.
harsh, and it's not that they're cold, but they can feel cold to their energy can feel cold, like they're not loving or kind.
Mm,
But they can't help it. It's because they're ruled by Pluto. It's this
mm.
intense energy of all or nothing. They either like you or they don't.
Yeah, and
Not
they're
gonna pretend.
fine with you not liking them.
Yeah, they don't care if you
I
like them.
do.
They don't, and they'll just cut you off. They don't, and
Yep.
to, and most signs aren't like that. So that's kind of their strength. Is if something's unhealthy, they'll just cut ties. If they're in a bad marriage, they'll divorce, and they won't look back because they're not help. They're awful or they're using me. They'll end things easily because they're the sign of death and endings.
Mm.
So
They're they're comfortable in that space.
yeah, yeah, changing.
Will be another cycle.
Yes, they're
This is
very
not the end. It's an eternal cycle. So they're comfortable. I've noticed that sun sign Scorpios are really comfortable with shadow work and in like the depths of the psyches. And they do, not that they get off, so to speak, on people's pain, but like they're really okay with people being uncomfortable next to them. Or I don't know if holding space is the right word, but like they're fine if you're not okay. Like they don't make it about them. They're just able to witness like
yeah,
deeper,
yeah.
heavier, more intense energies, I've noticed.
Yeah, they are. They can be very interested in mysticism
Mhm.
and life after death and spirits and souls and psychic abilities. They're very perceptive and they do have natural gifts. Like their gift is really perception and they can see through people. They can
Mm,
see through energy and know when something isn't right. They have a very powerful gut instinct. They really do. But they don't readily trust people. So
mhm,
they're learning to forgive people and to let go of things that are hurting them. And their vulnerable area is the female reproductive system or the male reproductive, prostate, ovaries, cyst on ovaries, uterus. They tend to get issues there because they repress their emotions. They're the sign of repression. They feel so intensely, they don't always know how to express it, so it stays in their body.
mm,
And so because they're not talkative and vocal like a Gemini, which we're going to get to next, where they always are expressing and they're great, they're happy, they're fun, they're lively, they're they're always looking at the dark side. Well, if you tell them, "Oh, you're all excited about something," they're like, "Yeah, but that's not realistic." They'll be like the not naysayer, but kind of the devil's advocate because they're very practical. Even though they're water, they're business minded you
mm,
know, think of like a shrewd business person. They have
mm,
that vibe. They also can be deep healers. So with Scorpio, it's one of those signs that the symbols, there's the higher Rosie. Sorry, my
Agree.
dog. I don't want her she's eating too fast. But
Slow down, Rosie.
the very like the very the high energy of them is they're the eagle. The eagle is the higher energy of like an enlightened Scorpio. The dark side of Scorpio is the scorpion, the lower vibe, the lower vibration, where they sting to kill if you hurt them. They're always on attack mode. But the higher is the eagle. And that's like, spiritual symbol where they're wisdom and wise and they can see everything clearly and they don't attack. They don't, you can see that, and the snake is also associated with Scorpio, the snake. So they have a lot of complexity to them. But they're very loyal. If they trust you, they're very loyal, but they're not the type that want hugs. I worked with a Scorpio and I'm a hugger and I kind of and she's like, I said, you don't like hugs? I said, I have to, can I hug you? And she's like, she doesn't like hugs. She doesn't like touch. They don't
Mhm.
typically want you to touch them unless they initiate. So they're just very guarded, and
Mhm.
that's because they self-protect. Because they're water. They really are deep down emotional. They
Mhm.
are, but they may hide it. But they're sensitive. They
Mhm.
just may not show it because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't
So
want
the healing work is to be able to trust other people or to let other people in.
in and be vulnerable about
Mhm.
what they're feeling.
Mhm.
Even if they just have one or two close friends they can do it with, it's important for them to find that because they can feel lonely. They can
Yeah.
feel lonely, and it's a heavy energy to be a Scorpio. It's heavy. It is. Death, rebirth, transformation, that's a lot.
Mhm.
So I always tell them it's good for them to get into energy healing or have it done on them, like Reiki, massage, even the touch, physical touch, have that done, and that'll help them heal too.
Mhm.
Things like that. And intimacy is big with them. They want deep intimacy, and they can't just like anyone. There has to be a chemistry. And if they don't have that intense feeling, they won't be with someone. Some of them may choose not to marry. I know a few of them and they've never married because they've just never met anyone that they have that spark with.
Mhm.
And they want that. They want this depth in
Yeah.
an intimate relationship, and that's hard to find, really. So they stay single. Or they find it and it fizzles. And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, it's not what they thought it was. Because they
Mhm.
need this intense thing in love too. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
possessive, jealous, those are the dark sides of Scorpio. Okay.
And so the
Competitive.
ruler is Gemini.
Yeah, Gemini. Gemini is the twin. I love Gemini. Geminis are air. They're fun. They're jovial, they're happy, they're energetic. They're the communicators of the zodiac. They love to talk, they love to share knowledge, they love to learn, they can be gossipy, they can be a little bit restless. They'll change their mind in a heartbeat because they're mutable. So Taurus and Scorpio are fixed signs, which means they don't like change and they stay grounded in what they want. They don't change if they don't like it. They make their mind up, they're not going to adapt. The mutable signs adapt. If you say, hey, we're going to go get pizza, we're going to go on this trip, and then last minute you're like, hey, I changed my mind, I want to get Italian. They're like, okay, cool. It doesn't bother them. They can just adapt and go. And so Gemini and Sagittarius are polar opposites. So Gemini is air. So they are known to be always doing more than one thing. They're always multitasking. They're always taking on a little bit too much because they like a lot of things. And
Mhm.
they're typically good at writing, communication, computers, technology. They're social butterfly.
Yeah,
They
they're very crucial. Mhm.
flirtatious. They need people around them. They're not the type to be alone. They don't like being by themselves. If they're home alone, they will get on the phone and call someone to talk. They will be texting or on social media. They love to be with people, their friends. They love to connect. They love to be on Zoom. I mean, they don't want to be alone. So,
Mhm.
and they're friend lovers. They typically, love people or get in relations with people that start out as their friend. And because friendship is really key to them, because they're not the most romantic, emotional people,
Mm.
they intellectualize their emotions. So they need a mental connection with someone to love, to be in, to want to be with them. Like if they can't talk with you, they don't want to be with you. They need people they can mentally stimulate, that can stimulate them and has similar interests. And they have tons of hobbies. They love to do many, many things, usually good with their hands. They have quick reflexes. They may be good at building, carpenter work, painting, making pottery, gadgets, they're good with all that. My uncle's, he can do all this stuff. He can paint you just like you look. He can build guitars. He's a carpenter, he's a Gemini, and then Sagittarius is, or Gemini's, thing to heal is, they need, to try to still their mind. Their mind is always going because it's ruled by Mercury. So they overthink everything. It's hard for them to meditate. So their self-care thing is get outdoors in nature, do something physical, hike, walk. If you ask them just to sit and chill and do yoga and stuff, not going to work because they have
Do hot yoga.
too much energy. They got to be moving. They're constantly on the go, man. I mean, I worked with one. He was up and down the hallway 20 times a day. I mean, restless. Like he was like real tall guy, skinny, and he was from Britain. He'd walk in and I'm like, "Do you ever stop? Do you ever sit still?" He's like, "No, I can't." So they're always walking around talking to people or doing something. So being home just watching a movie with the family, it can be difficult. They want to be out in the garage tinkering with something. They just have their own energy that's very restless.
Mm.
So they need people to listen to them and give them advice because they're going to ask you lots of questions. What should I do? They're the type that's going to ask their friends every single thing about what they should do for choices in their life. They want to
Mm.
know everyone's opinion. I know so many Geminis are like, I just want to know everything about people. Like they love that. They love getting to know why are people the way they are. They love that. That's why they go up to strangers and say, "Hey, how you doing?" They're very friendly. They're not shy, you know.
No, they're not.
And it's hard not to like them because they're so happy. They just make you feel comfortable because they just want to talk, and so Gemini rules, the lungs and the respiratory system. So a lot of them, are prone to getting bronchitis, colds, things like that, a pneumonia if they don't take care of themselves or they get stressed out. That's where it kind of goes for them,
Mm.
goes there. Where Taurus is, it goes to their throat. They'll get a scratchy throat or, they'll lose their voice. Gemini is, the lungs. So it's important for them to breathe and do breathing stuff and getting fresh air, things like that. That's why, it's not good for them to be cooped up at a desk all day. They
No.
they, they got to be able to move around or at least get outside a little bit, go walk at lunch, whatever. And then Sag is similar to Gemini, except they're fire. Sag and Gemini are the knowledge signs. They love to learn. They love to explore. They're adventurous. They love to travel. They like to be on the move. So Sag is foreign travel, going faraway lands, eating different foods, learning different languages. A lot of them, love higher education, also religion, philosophy. They have strong belief system. Gemini studies a little bit of everything and knows a lot about a lot of different things, but they don't always get in depth with one thing. They just know a lot of variety.
Mm.
And they love that. They'll have one book open, they'll start another one. Where Sag, they study and they become experts in in one or two things, and they are very strong in what they believe. And the thing about Sag is they are kind, friendly, optimistic. They're the optimist of the zodiac, positive thinkers. They have hope and faith in a higher power. They naturally, try to see things in a positive light. They do. They try to
Mm.
be positive. They have a very happy energy because they're ruled by Jupiter, the planet of good luck and good fortune and abundance. So they have this open, accepting, friendly thing, but they also can be very set in what they believe in, and they'll tell you. That's the thing I like about Sag is they tell you what they think in a direct way, but it's kind. Where Aries is more blunt and they'll just say it, And it can
Mm.
be conflict. They have a lot of conflict sometimes, Aries do, because it's the way they come across. Whereas Sag is fire, but they're like, listen, you have a mistake. I had a lady all the ladies I worked with that were Sages, I clicked with them. They were my buddies. And they're Carmen, you did such a great job at the newsletter, but there's an error. They'll tell they'll tell you you had a spelling error in there. And I'm like, oh no. They're like, yeah, you need to change it. So they're good at telling you the truth in a nice way.
Mm.
And I love that. And then if you want positive, if you want constructive feedback, they're the person to do it because they just do it in a way that's assertive and it's blunt, but it's kind.
Mm.
And so and I've seen a lot of Sages do this. My mother's a Sag, and the thing about them is they want their freedom. They want autonomy. They want to come and go when they want. They don't want someone controlling them. They can be married, they can have relationships, but they want to be able to be themselves. And if they want to get on a plane and go somewhere, they want to be able to do it. They don't want to have to get permission. They're the free spirits. They
Mm.
really are. They're the traveler, the adventurer, the explorer, the philosopher. They love to learn, they love to meet people, but they're a little bit more grounded than a Gemini. They have a lot of high energy too, though. They can do a lot and they're always on the move. And being outdoors, they love that. Hiking, fresh air, they don't ride in the car, letting the wind hit their hair, feeling free, feeling light, that's kind of Sag.
This was so my boy. Like he's 5 and
Yeah.
he loves Legos and like he will play Legos by himself if no one is
Yeah.
playing with him for
Oh,
like hours.
yeah.
And he'll make these incredible designs that are like symmetrical with bits and pieces and they all have different functions. And
Neat.
like he's so kind. And like if you're upset, he'll be like, I get sad too sometimes. And like, can I give
Yeah.
you a hug? But then you're like, hey, Mati, can you go put your shoes, where the shoes go? And he'll just be
Yeah.
like he la 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 la, like he'll do it if and when he wants to,
Yeah, they don't want to be told what to do.
ever,
That's a
like
Sag.
ever.
Yeah, they don't like having a boss. They like to be free. They want to feel free and they'll do it when they want to do it. That's Sag. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They don't like to have rules and people rules. No, they don't like that. Yeah.
No, I know. They'll make up their own rules.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and they are they can appear laid back and easygoing. They can appear that way.
Mhm.
And then when you get to know them, you realize, wow, they're really smart. Like they know a lot. Like, they like to read, they like to learn. They
Mhm.
like to, educate themselves. They rule the house of education and travel,
Mm.
ninth house. So living in a foreign country, that's exactly perfect for your son because he's a Sag. Sages are meant to travel or live or go somewhere far away from their normal culture,
Mm.
somewhere different from where they were raised or born.
Mm.
So it's really interesting. Sometimes they marry people from another country or culture. That's also very common for Sag.
Mm.
They attract that because they rule that house. So
Yeah.
it's
Another place, another realm to explore, another
yeah,
culture, another
yeah,
person's set of beliefs and
yeah.
upbringing. And yeah,
Love that.
so interesting. Okay. And so where is Sag's area where they can lean into to help their
Yeah. Their thing is they need to make time to to try to be still, to slow down a little bit like Jim and I try to. But what helps for them is doing, getting outdoors, doing something active, walking, hiking, kind of similar to Jim and I because it's hard for them to also sit now, or they can reading something calm like that. It gets their in their head. It helps them kind of relax if they read a good book they like, or make time for solitude. You
Mm.
know, Sag rules the hips and the thighs and the sciatic nerve. So a lot of Sages get hip issues or lower back, thigh. My mother's a Sag. She has sciatic nerve. So many issues with that. And all the few Sag ladies that I'm friends with, one used to have her own yoga studio, taught yoga her whole life, and she started having severe hip pain. And she was only in her early 30s. And they're like, It's just, it was her body. She was very tall, but it was just her hips are her vulnerable area. So she had to quit teaching yoga because it was hurting her hips so bad.
Wow.
She was like an expert, had her own studio and everything. So, Sag, that's their vulnerable area is their hips and the liver. The liver is also a Sag thing. So Sages are, we always advise they don't drink a lot of alcohol. They'd be careful with that. And they like to party, they like to have fun. So, sometimes that goes with it socially. So they just have to be careful because their liver can have a hard time detoxing sometimes, or medications. They can be very sensitive to medications. A lot of Sages I know, the medication will do the opposite on them. Like if it's
Mm,
supposed to help you sleep, it'll wake them up.
mm,
It has to do with their liver, I think, being sensitive.
mm,
And so then you have Cancer and Capricorn. Cancer is the mother, the nurture. Capricorn's the father energy of the zodiac. So mother, father, opposites, right? Cancer's water. They're ruled by the moon. They're known to be nurturers, sensitive, caring, kind, compassionate, also homebodies. Cancer rules the home and family. Capricorn rules career, work. So see the opposite. But they're compatible because they're earth and water. So Cancer is water, Capricorn's earth. So they get along well. My grandparents were polar opposites. My grandma was a Cancer, my grandfather was a Capricorn. So they typically you draw your polar opposite because they understand you and you understand them. Even though
mhm,
you're different enough, but there's always similarities between you and your polar opposite sign. Always. So always remember that. Even though you're a Cancer, you're always going to have Capricorn traits as well. So cancers are known to be a little thrifty and into finances, managing them because financial things make them feel secure. That they can take care of their kids, their parents, their home and family. Capricorn is the money sign. They love to work, success, achievement, business, being recognized for their work. And they like to make money. Capricorns like money because it's security. They're an earth sign. They want to be able to pay their bills, take care of their family. So they both have that in them. But Cancer they have a shell they can put up to protect themselves. So that helps them because they're very sensitive and soft inside. But they can put that hard crab shell up. They're the crab and the zodiac, and they can protect their vulnerable energy. But they can also come across as passive aggressive sometimes because they'll ask them, "Are you okay?" Because you'll sense they're not, and like, "I'm fine."
mm,
They're really not. They
mm,
they're very they take things personal. Cancers do because they feel everything. They're
mm,
very empathic because they're water and they're ruled by the moon. So the
mm,
tides of, the moon's full moon always affects cancers more than any sign because
mm,
that's their ruler. And so they can get irritable. They can, have insomnia. They can get depressed. They can have their moods fluctuate. Okay. And they rule the stomach, okay, and the breasts. So that's their vulnerable area. And they're worriers, but they're emotional worriers. They emotionally worry, which can go affect their stomach. And then they also need to make sure they get mammograms because the breast is also their vulnerable area. Um, but they love to help people, so they're connected to children, animals. A lot of them, like if they don't have a child, they like to have a pet, and they like to caretake. They like to go into the helping professions. A lot of them go into nursing, social work, healing, teaching, all those kind of fields. Some of them also go into finance, accounting, things that are practical, and that's kind of the Capricorn side they have in them because Capricorns are very good at money, very practical, realistic. And so they have a little bit of that because it makes them feel safe and comfortable to know they have finances, right? And
mhm,
that's the thing. They like to be home. Their home is their castle. They love to entertain in the home. They love to have friends over in the home, cook for them. A lot of cancers are chefs. They're
mhm.
excellent cooks.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
love to be in the kitchen and making something beautiful to eat and and they love that. But they're the kind of person they'll know if something's wrong with someone and "Are you okay? You seem different," because they feel people's energy.
Mhm,
Very empathic, very
mhm,
empathic. And it's important for Cancer to have time alone in solitude they're the kind of sign that, writing, journaling, listening to music, meditation can help them a lot because they like to be home. So they can find a place in the home to go and do their spiritual, either stretching, yoga, breathing exercises, meditate, whatever it is. And they lean to be near water. If they're stressed and need to heal, it's good for them to go to the ocean. Go
Mhm.
and look at the water, even if they don't like to swim, but it's good for them to soak in the water or soak in a bathtub. Be near the water, go look at water, go by a lake, walk by a lake, whatever it is, and that helps them heal. Water is very healing for them. And Capricorn is the father energy. So it's the disciplinarian. Capricorns are super responsible and they always say Capricorns age backwards.
Oh.
So they always say that they seem like many adults when they're little.
Mm.
And as they get older, they become more childlike because they're born with a super practical, cautious, responsible nature. They feel like they have to do everything right, and so they're hard on themselves. Okay, so they want to do everything perfect. They can feel responsible for their parents. They can be very hard on themselves if they don't make straight A's. They can just be really hard on themselves, and so but Capricorns need to be doing something. They love to work. They love to feel efficient and productive. And so, if you can give them tasks in the house, and when people get older, Capricorns are the workaholics. They're known to work. They tend to focus on work and can neglect the family and home. They have to learn to balance a work-life balance. It's so important for Capricorn specifically and Cancer because they rule the home and family and career. So it's this balance between, everyone has to go out in the world and work, most of us, and we also have family responsibilities. So it's learning to balance that, and that can be hard for everyone, especially if both people are working and you have kids and but Capricorn likes to make money to provide. They're not emotional type people. But there is a side to them that is more sensitive than the other earth signs, because they're the water goat. That's their symbol. So
Oh.
they live on land and water. So if you, and I have a Capricorn, father, brother, and grandfather, and best friend are all Capricorn. They are really matter of fact, realistic, practical, to the point, real, like anything weird, they're not into that. But some of them, they're very intuitive. And they do care about helping their family and friends. And they can really good listeners. They can give very good advice. So they're caring. They just do it in a I'm gonna show you in a practical way. Like I'm gonna loan you money, or I'm gonna take the trash out, or I'm gonna go get the car fixed. They're acts of service people,
Mhm.
in the love languages.
Mhm.
And where a Cancer is more emotionally nurturing. They want to hug. They want to take care of you, feed you, make you feel better when you're sick. Capricorn's like, I need to go work so I can pay the bills and take care of my family. So Capricorn is the achiever of the zodiac. So many of them, it's a weird thing that I notice is that they want a career so bad and they want to be the best and they want to be respected. They love to own their own business. They love to be in charge. They want to be the boss because they
Mhm.
don't really like working for other people and they have a certain work ethic. They have a certain work ethic that they expect others to be like them. And the problem is not everybody's like that, right? So they get frustrated. But it's good if they can realize that they sometimes feel like they're the goat on the mountain that goes up that mountainside and then they fall on the rocks. Then they got to get themselves up again and go back up the mountain. And what that means is that their success typically comes later in life.
Mhm.
So they work so hard and they often feel like everyone gets promoted before them, everybody's moving up and they're not. It happens for them later than most, but it does happen. They will reach the top of the mountain and they will be success in whatever they put their work and effort into. I told this to my brother because he was a Capricorn and he was having a lot of trouble. He had an MBA, but he was a personal trainer for many years in the physical fitness world, and his wife really wanted him to get a normal job, like because he had an MBA. He didn't really want to do that. He loved fitness, he loved that. And but it wasn't making a lot of money. They have three kids. So he went ahead and changed careers and got into sales, which was really tough. But I told him, don't worry, you will have a high position, you'll make good money, your work's going to be fine. And eventually now it is, but it took him a while. He had to get in his 40s, in his 40s before he finally felt like he was doing well at work. So Capricorns just they're worker bees, and they don't always feel appreciated, but they keep working. They keep going and they have their goals. They're goal oriented. They're efficient and productive kind of people. They need to be doing something too. They like to keep busy in practical ways. But their vulnerable area is the knees and the joints and the skin. That's their vulnerable area. So a lot of Capricorns get knee problems or have to have a knee replacement, or they get weird skin stuff, trying to think what's that one rashes, things like that. And they have sensitive skin. That's kind of their thing too. But they need to learn it's okay to take a vacation. That's what they're learning, to get away from work, to truly get away from work. That means when they're at the beach with the family, they need to balance and not get on the phone, not get on the computer, but really take time to heal and be okay not working. That's what their self-care is. And they can do that through, being with the family, just being home, not having to be working all the time. They need a time not to have to be feeling like they're achieving something. So it's okay for them. They may want to be outside working on cars, whatever soothes them, but they need to take time off work. They do,
Mhm.
and take that time for themselves. It can be hard for them because they're the doers. The earth signs are all the
Great.
earth signs have trouble um relaxing too, because I mean they're more calm because they're earth. It's not like they're restless like Gemini and Sag or Aries, but they just that's their nature, is to fix something, is
Mm,
to do something, right? Physical.
mhm.
And so it's okay if they do a hobby, something like that, play a game, play chess, something
Um,
that gets them out of their work mode or their,
Way to disengage from the
yeah,
worker bee mode that
yeah,
they get can be enraptured in.
yeah,
So their healing modality is to rest and take breaks or actual real vacations that are
yeah,
like disconnected from the traditional routine of how they usually have their day-to-day life, which is work focused.
yeah. And they also need to learn to be more vulnerable because they don't like to show weakness. That's a Capricorn thing. They'll
Mm,
act stoic, like, this stoic thing, like
mm,
serious. They got
mhm,
this serious energy about them. But then on the other side, when they trust you and they tend to like people that are opposite of them because it brings them out of their shell because they
mm,
are so serious and responsible. So they like fun people. It's not the best match for them though in marriage, but they do attract, they like people that are different than them, that make them feel more comfortable to talk because they can be very quiet and they
mm,
can have a hard time expressing themselves with words and expressing what they feel. They're like
mm,
the strong silent types.
mm,
And so they can get depressed just like Cancer can, because Cancer, Capricorn, they both can be emotional, and they always say that Capricorns are known to have dark moods. Well, that
mm,
makes sense because Cancer's their opposite, and Cancers are emotional, water. So they'll snap out of it eventually, but they can go through the moodiness. That's very common, and irritability with a Capricorn. And when they're irritable, you'll know it because they'll snap at it. They'll tell you. And Cancer is kind of a little different how they do it, but they're similar. And so Capricorn also is known to have a very sarcastic sense of humor.
mm,
That's how they lighten the load. Like if it's heavy, they'll like wit. They'll say something really funny, but it's dark humor, where Gemini is funny and they're always telling jokes, but it's lighthearted humor. Capricorn's like dark humor. And you're like, oh, I can't believe you said that, but everybody laughs. And that's how they, kind of wake up the room. So a lot of them have a sense of humor, which it's in a lot of books, but I've seen it in real life of Capricorns that they have a funny sense of humor, and it can be dark. It can be a
yeah.
little dark. So if you know a Capricorn, you might recognize it. But yeah, that's them. And then there's two more pairs. We have Leo and Aquarius. Leo is the entertainer. Leo is the actor, the actress, the leader. Leos want to shine. They're ruled by the sun. So the sun rules them. So they are warm and light and happy and bold and brave and courageous. So when a Leo walks in, you feel them because they light up the room. Some of them can be shy. That's kind of, you don't think they would be, but some of them are. I met some shy Leos, but they have a confidence about them and they want to express themselves. That's the number one thing with them. They want to be who they are. They're fire. So they'll tell you what they think. They're creative, but they're a little bit kinder and they're generous. They're a little bit childlike,
Mm,
different than an Aries or a Sag, because they're fire, but it's more of a bright, warm, fun-loving energy. They can be flirtatious, they're charming, magnetic. People are drawn to them. They walk in the room and everybody's like, whoa, and they're friendly. They're
mm,
friendly, but they also want to be the best and they want to be in charge. And they like to be their own boss too. They like that freedom and independence of being on, not having to answer to other people. They're freedom lovers too, Leo. But they also like to be authoritarian. They can be they're the king and queen of the zodiac. Okay. The king and the lion, right? The lion in the jungle, the lioness, they are the ruler. So they are royalty. They have this sense of knowing that they're special. They know they're special and they want people to respect them, be kind to them, affectionate. And if you do that, you'll win their heart. I mean, they're very loyal and they are very loving people. But you have to show them that you care. And they rule children. Leo rules the fifth house of children, art, creativity, hobbies, love affairs, gambling, taking risk. A lot of Leos go into the entertainment business. Not all, but the government, finance, but mostly music. A lot of politicians are Leos, a lot of actresses and musicians are Leos. There's a ton
mm,
of them. And that's
mhm,
because they're meant to be on stage in some way. They're meant to. And it doesn't have to be a huge stage like TV, but it could be. And they need to express their artistic and creative side. Whatever creative side they have, they need to do things to express it. Maybe they're secretly like to write and they're in a totally weird career field that doesn't do that. Okay, they need to write, or they like to paint or draw and no one would ever know it because they're working, as a politician. They can
mm,
still paint and draw, right, as a hobby. So they need to express themselves and they need to be having fun. They want
mm,
to have fun. They don't want anything too serious, and so they're known to be heartbreakers. It's hard for them to commit sometimes because they love to be in love. You know, they love romance and they don't want anyone controlling them. They'll be running if you try to control them, and it can be hard to tie them down. But they need someone that lets them be free, feel free to be them and be themselves, and then it
mm,
can work. Leo rules the heart and the circulatory system. So that's their vulnerable area. And that's why they're known to be so generous and they can be very loving. But they're fire, so they can be bold and they can also be the ruler. They have both sides of them. And they like to dress. They like to express themselves through their makeup, what they wear, all those things, be their creativity through that too. And the thing with Leo is they need how they self-care and heal is by doing something that's creative, that taps into self-expression. So whatever that is, if they like to, to make jewelry, oh, they need to do it. If they want to fish, go do a hobby, go fishing, whatever it is, they need to make time for the fun because they got to have fun and do things that bring joy.
mhm.
If they don't feel joy in their work and in their life,
Explode.
they explode. They have their fire. They
Like a
roar like a lion.
like the sun
Yeah,
dying. My
yeah.
husband's a Leo, and I
Oh,
mean,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. Nice. I love it.
Oh, like that. He doesn't
Yeah,
like to dress. He likes to wear nothing, like just
yeah,
shorts.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all about having fun, doing
Yeah.
hobbies, doing, anything fun and joy and hobbies is fifth house. It's Leo, you
Mm.
know. love affairs, gambling, sports, all those things, taking risks, um, having fun, art, creativity, all that stuff. So it's interesting. Fifth, Leos are they tend to be happy. They're happy people unless they're stuck in something that they're miserable.
Hmm.
They can be like, but they will change. They're courageous. They will make changes. They're not going to stay in a job they hate. They
No.
they will change it, and it may take some time, but they want to be happy. They want to have fun. They want to have fun and be happy and not feel stagnant because they're
Mhm.
fire. They're fire. And then Aquarius is their opposite. Aquarius is air. Aquarius is the eccentric. They're the rebel of the zodiac. So similar energy of Leo. They don't want to be told what to do. They're freedom loving. They're independent, fiercely independent. They think outside the box. So Aquarius is non-traditional. Capricorn is traditional. Like
Mhm.
how we always did it this way, and this is how my parents and grandparents and the history does it. Aquarius is like, that makes no sense. I'm changing this whole thing up. Or they're futuristic. They're like, okay, that's dogmatic. We're not doing that anymore. Why not we do this? They want to, and their thoughts are like futuristic. They're like ahead of their time. So they'll come up with these creative, they're innovative ideas. And people are like, they feel uncomfortable because they don't quite understand it and it's new. But Aquarius forces that on people, just their presence. So they like to shock people with how they act, dress, believe, what they wear, how they interact with people. But they're also the networker. They have lots of acquaintances. They love to network and socialize and meet people, but they can do it. They're detached emotionally. They're known to be a little bit not as passionate and vibrant as Leo. Where Leos, they tell you how they feel. They're big hearted, how they feel. They express it. Aquarius is more subtle. They're air, they're intellectual, they're thinkers. So they seem detached emotionally, but they're very kind and they will friendship. They're friendly, but they want complete freedom. So it's hard for them to commit because they don't like traditional commitment in marriage. Like it's best, why do I have to marry someone? It's just a piece of paper. That's kind of their vibe. Why can't I just live with someone? I'm not dating anyone else. That's my spouse. Why do I have to have a piece of paper? That kind of thing. But they also want to be able to change and go somewhere when they want to and not be trapped.
Mm.
So they're very much the free spirits. A lot of Aquarians I meet never marry. Never marry. Females, males, doesn't matter. They're like, never married. I didn't want to. I date. I have a companion. And that's cool for them. They like that. And they love to learn. They love to study and learn. And they love it, to be adventurous. So Aquarians are humanitarians too. They love to help people on a big level. They like to be a part of groups because they rule groups and friendship in the chart. The 11th house is Aquarius. So that's big for them. Their vulnerable area is the ankles and the circulatory system. Um, and they also, what they need to do to self-care is intellectual type things like reading, chess, playing games, things like that. Maybe travel, getting out and about, going somewhere. It's hard for them. They're always thinking, they're the thinkers. But no,
Always plotting.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Scheming and plotting.
yeah. They're fun because there's a kindness about, like, I always feel Aquarius energy because it's like calming it's like airy, like it just feels it's kind of like different than water, but it has a calming influence, like laid back, that's the word, like chill, like I know a lot of Aquarians that are just, I'm like, you got to be Aquarius because they're not restless like a Gemini, they're not talking all the time, they're just kind of there, and then they're smart, you start talking to them, but they have a calming, a very airy energy. And when you can't quite figure someone out and feel their emotions, like what are they feeling, it's usually Aquarius. It doesn't mean they're not emotional. They just seem and appear aloof and detached from emotion. But they love to help people. A lot of them go into the helping professions, and it's because, but they can do it in a detached, impersonal way, you know, and they're really good at it being unbiased, like thinking, well, let's look at this. They don't take things personal as some of the other signs do.
Mm.
They're logical. They're logical people. So then the last pair is Virgo and Pisces. So Virgo, that's my sign. Virgo is the analyzer, the worrier. They are also workaholics. Virgo and Capricorn are the worker bees. They like to be achieving, efficient, productive, but Virgos specifically are known to be OCD. Like they like lists, they like routine, they like structure. They like to organize. They zone in on the misspelled word or the little bitty minute details that everybody else misses. So if they can you'll edit a document 50 times and spell check says there's no errors, and a Virgo will read it and see the error right away because they
Mm.
see the little things, and they love to help people. A lot of them go into social work, the medical field. Also, they love to write. They love to teach. They're the teachers. They're the communicators. They're like Gemini. They're both ruled by the same planet. They love to talk, but Virgos are more shy and more grounded because they're Earth. So they're not as friendly as a Gemini. And sometimes people think Virgos are difficult. Virgos get a bad rap, but that they're critical. They're more critical on themselves than others because they're perfectionists. They
Mm.
want everything to be perfect. They want to do perfect. They want to do hard work and they want it to be right. And they take criticism really hard. But they also want to fix things and make things better. So when they come across as critical, it's because they care. If they didn't care, they wouldn't tell you about it.
Mm.
And so I'm married to a Virgo and my daughter's a Virgo. So we have three Virgos in my house.
Counselor. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And but Virgo is the most efficient, organized person. So they're good at helping people get organized. They're good at listening to people's problems, giving practical advice. They love that. They love talking, learning, all those things, teaching, writing, and service. So the sign of service. They're the sign of practical service. And health and wellness is big with Virgo because if they're overthinkers. So their mind and body are definitely connected, the brain stomach connection. So their vulnerable area is the stomach and the digestive system. They can get ulcers, they can get sick stomach, nausea, all that. If they get anxious, they're worriers. They're intellectual worriers. They obsess. They repeat in their mind over and over again things and try to figure it out.
Mm.
Even though they're Earth, they're overthinking.
Mm.
Now, cancers emotionally worry. They worry about, and it's emotional. Virgo is intellectual worry and
Mm.
obsess and all this, and it's hard for them because they can struggle with sleep because they'll wake up in the night thinking about work,
Mm.
overthinking something, replaying it, they're just very mental, very always thinking, like Gemini, similar, but because they're ruled by the same planet, that's why. But Virgos are more, it's harder for Virgos because they're more shy than a Gemini. So they don't express it as well, by talking to everybody. But talking helps them. I always tell Virgos to write out their feelings, write out their worries, make a list, get organized. What are your priorities? That way you're not taking on too much. If you're stressed, they get stressed. Pick two things to focus on. Don't worry about the other stuff right now. Things like that. But Virgos are the healers. A lot of them go in, diet, exercise, eating right, helping people with a routine. They're also good at finances, anything with healthcare. And then Pisces is their polar opposite, which is the spiritual sign. They're the mystic, and they trust and have faith that the universe will provide. Where Virgo is the opposite. It's like I have to work hard to provide, right? And so they have this balance. And Pisces is spiritual service. They're very into astrology and crystals and meditation and yoga, and all these mystical things. They're the artist, they're the musician, they're the laid back person. Like just chill. Oh, let's just go with the flow and just trust where we end up. And Virgo's like, wait a minute, we need a plan. We got to have a plan. Where are we going to stay? Pisces like, let's just swing it. So that you can see the opposite, but they help each other because Pisces needs a little Virgo organization and Virgo needs a little bit of Pisces faith and easygoing stuff, right? So, but Pisces are they need a spiritual path and they need to feel like they're compassionate, they're very empathic, but Pisces lack boundaries. That's their biggest lesson, is to learn. They're idealistic and they always see the good in people and in things. They get hurt easily because they're very trusting and naive till they get burned and then they feel like a victim and then they can feel like people are always hurting them and it's that they're so empathic they have to learn to ground their energy and to protect their energy with a bubble. I would say put a bubble around themselves or in some kind of a barrier and they got to learn to have boundaries and that it's okay to tell people no. They don't want to be unkind. They're very kind, but they can get hurt easy because they're so sensitive and emotional. So
Mhm.
that's Pisces. And those are the 12. And Pisces is water, Virgo is earth. So you can see, and they're mutable. So Virgo and Pisces, easy go and change. Leo, Aquarius is fixed. They like things their way and they don't like to change it when they make their mind up. Cancer, Capricorn, or Cardinal. They rule the summer is Cancer, Capricorn rules the winter. So cardinal signs always rule the seasons. And then Gemini, Sag is mutable. They're go with the flow. Yeah.
That was really cool. That was so, I mean, every
Yeah.
sign that you described, I thought of a person that I knew that really fits that description.
Yeah.
But what I really liked about your explanations is like what these signs, what they can lean into more. So, as someone, I mean, if you were listening to this show and you heard the description of your sun sign, I would invite you to take on just a piece of what Carmen shared and how you can help balance yourself within what you were given and like your life circumstances and where you find yourself currently. It was just like a simple thing like journaling for, was it Pisces?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
Virgo.
Virgo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, get
yeah,
the worries out of your head. And
yeah,
I'm thinking about the people that I know, and like some of them automatically do these things. That's their like preferred thing. And they didn't necessarily have an astrologer tell them that they just feel inclined to
yeah.
do that. But if you're not doing the thing that Carmen recommended for your sign to further yourself along a healing path, I totally invite you to. And this has been super fun. I have to go downstairs because I hear my son screaming at my other son.
Oh,
My
oh
Leo
no, I
and
know.
Sag are fighting.
Yeah.
But before
Well,
we run down there, I'd love for you to tell us where we can find you and people if they'd like a
yeah.
reading or to do a class, where do they find you?
Sure, sure. You can find me on Carmen at carmenturnerschott.com. Deep Soul Divers Astrology on Facebook is my page, so please like me, follow me there. And then Instagram is Carmen Turner Schott Author. Follow me on Instagram. And I have a YouTube channel, Carmen Turner Schott, Schott. And my newest book is Your Astrological Energy, Maximize the Power of Your Birth Chart, and it comes out in August, so it's pre-order available. And it's pretty much you can harness any of the 12 signs energies in your life because you have one of those signs somewhere in your birth chart. So that's what the book's about. And it goes into each sun sign, just like we were talking, and gives tips and how they harness that energy. If you want to learn to harness Scorpio's energy, because you're fascinated by them, my book teaches you how to do that. So
Oh,
that's my newest book out there, and love for you to follow me. I do consults. Would love to do your birth chart and really dive deep with you because there's so much more than just your sun sign, your moon sign, your relationships, your career, your health. We can look at everything. So you can find me on my at carmenturnershot.com and I have my consults page there. You can contact me through my site.
cool. Yeah, sun signs are just kind of like the gateway
Oh
drug.
yeah, it's basic. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
child's play.
Yeah.
If you like that small sampling, go visit Carmen, and I'll put the links that you mentioned in the show notes and the podcast and on YouTube. And this was so fun. Thank you so much. I would love to get a hold of one of your books as well. I'll send you an email about that because I was looking.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Go
Thank
check
you.
out Carmen, everyone, and please be kind to yourself. I hope you learned more about yourself in today's episode, and yeah, like fall in love with what you got. I feel like there's this tendency of human beings to be like, over there, that way, this is better. But like to really sink into the hands that we were given or the cards that we were dealt gives us a lot more flexibility and like maneuverability to like work with what we have and to
Yeah.
really accept, like accept our shortcomings, quote, quote. They're not necessarily shortcomings, but
Yeah.
to like um take it as a whole thing, like there's not it's a beautiful experience to be who you are, and the more you learn about who you are and why, it's so fulfilling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Astrology is the map of your soul. We chose to be born at the time, place, date of birth that we were born, and those energies and lessons is what we chose to learn. So the
Mm.
chart shows your entire life and your soul mission. So that's a whole nother book and show. But anyway, thanks for having me on.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you
Thank
for this.
you.
This is awesome.
Thank you.